Welcome to the Sober Edge podcast, inspiration for alcohol-free living. I'm your host, Terry Patterson, functional nutritionist and This Naked Mind senior coach. The Sober Edge is a place to explore the infinite possibilities on the other side of drinking. In a culture soaked in booze, discover the wonder and joy of taking a different path. Meet real people living lives of purpose and passion. Learn the truth behind the alcohol myths and get ready to be motivated, inspired, and astounded by what is possible with the Sober Edge. Well, it's Terry, and this is episode 139 of the Sober Edge podcast. So, welcome to today's episode. I want to just give you a little brief introduction, and I want to share with you a special event that's coming up. So, the Sober Edge Book Club and my partner, Sarah Showard in Phoenix, Arizona, are getting ready to put on a special event where we are sponsoring and co-hosting along with Zero Proof Experiences Connect. So you have heard me talk about Zero Proof Experiences before. These are the ladies who put on the Sober in the City events, and they are doing something really special. So I think this is the second or third time that they have had a multi-city in-person event. So this is an opportunity to support you on your sober curious or sober serious journey and give you a chance to show up in person at a location near you for an evening of bubbles, connection, fun, and friendship. So this event is taking place on Monday. Yes, this coming Monday, May 20th, from 6 to 8 p.m. in 3 different locations. And then on Tuesday, May 21st in Paris, France. So the Phoenix location will be taking place at the Giving Tree. I've got all the information for you in the show notes. My friend Sarah Showard is going to be there. We are so honored to be cross-promoting this event along with Zero Proof Experiences. We hope if you are local to Phoenix, you'll come and hang out for a little while with my friend Sarah. And if you are in Paris, France, Kirkland, Washington, or Central Washington, you are also invited to one of the local meetups. So this is going to be happening more and more throughout different parts of the US and some international locations. So stay tuned because I'm always happy to share these events. They really are so much fun. And I am looking forward to perhaps hosting something in my city, which would be Sacramento, California, in the very near future. So again, all of the show notes and the sign up and the information will be, all of the information in the sign up will be in the show notes. And then stay tuned for today's episode, which is about big growth, making room for change. So this is really diving into creating space, debunking scarcity, how to cultivate a more abundant mindset, and what that might look like for you on your alcohol-free journey. So I hope you will be entertained, inspired, and challenged by today's episode of the Sober Edge podcast. Hey, it's Terry back with another edition of the Sober Edge podcast, and today is a solo episode. This is a concept that I've shared a little bit about before, and it's around creating space. And recently, like many of us, I have had a perspective shift or change, or just an awareness that my perspective is limited to me as an individual. And I want to share the broadening that I have experienced around this concept of creating space and choosing to change your relationship with alcohol, moving through this place of exploring alcohol freedom. Again, I want to say, and I've said it before, that I believe there is a significant difference between becoming alcohol free and living alcohol free. And today I want to explore this idea of creating space and what I've recently come to explore around my old thoughts around it and my newer thoughts around it, and sort of this blend. I think one of the things that's so fascinating for me in this journey as a coach, as an entrepreneur, as a human, as a woman in midlife, is that I have one perspective. Me here in my home in Grass Valley, California, at 63 years of age, looks very different than a young mom who maybe lives in Canada and works full time, or a gentleman who lives a really high stakes entrepreneurial life in the Midwest. And so I want to just share that in all transparency because I think it's so beautiful when we grow and evolve and when we do it out loud. I never want to be someone who is stuck in one idea. I think that was the old me. And as I've worked on my growth mindset, I really want to bring these ideas and concepts to you. So that was just sort of a way to set up this conversation. And happened a few months ago. Someone actually challenged my idea of creating space. So I believe that creating space is when we allow ourselves to move beyond what our comfort zone is, what our current understanding is, and when we really reach for that next level. And I've often talked about giving up alcohol as an opportunity to create space. I believe that it was such a constraint for me personally that I needed to be at a place where I was without alcohol in order to grow. And this is what I mean when I talk a little bit about capacity to grow and change. So, when we think about creating space, there is a place where, with alcohol out of the way, we start to see the bigger picture. And for me, that really looked like exploring my relationships, my friendships, my marriage. It looked like me questioning what I was doing in my career. Was I being as honest with myself and others as I wanted to be? With alcohol out of the picture, I not only could see what was ahead to work on, I had to see it. There were no more blinders. And so when I talk about creating space as I have in the past, I really believe that with alcohol out of the way, there is more opportunity to explore kind of the root cause. And when I stopped drinking alcohol and trained as a functional nutritionist, we always talked about root cause. And so that too has informed my idea of how we create space and what that looks like. So that's been, really my personal story and my personal journey. And I think it's been a valuable place. I hope it's been a valuable place to share with you. However, I have been challenged recently to broaden this idea of creating space and understand that there are dimensions and there are other perspectives. So, both of these situations came up around the idea of motherhood. And at 63 years old, my children are grown, although I do help co parent my 12-year-old special needs grandson. And I am a grandmother to twin 4-year-old girls. So there are some young ones in my life. I am not enmeshed in motherhood day to day. My adult children are grown and have their own lives. And so my idea of creating space and the work that I started doing around alcohol freedom at 55 looks very different than maybe your situation or someone who is still a young mom. And so the first time this idea of creating space bumped up against my perspective was when a client said, when I stopped drinking alcohol, I didn't have more time. I had less time because for me, I personally had so much time and energy when I stopped drinking. That was what drew me to the next thing. And in my case, it was nutrition school. And so I've been sharing this as a foregone conclusion, like you're going to stop drinking alcohol and you're going to have time and energy. But this mama told me that wasn't the case for her. And it allowed me to start exploring, well, what does that look like? And here's what I've realized that can happen is that when we stop drinking alcohol, we may then start showing up for our life in a bigger way. So perhaps for you, you stopped drinking alcohol, and instead of feeling like you had more time and space, you felt like, oh my goodness, the ways that I now am participating in life, being more involved in my children's lives, showing up at work in a bigger way, being more committed to physical health and wellness is creating less and less and less time. And so I stopped drinking and I want to do this deeper work, but my life is filled with tasks and activities and obligations. And that can feel like there is no space that was created. So that was kind of the first idea that I've been thinking about for a few months when my client shared this with me. And she said, actually, I have less time since I stopped drinking. And I've been thinking of that for a while. And I wanted to bring that perspective because if this is you, I want this to be a place that you see yourself. And I want to talk about how we can still create space, how we can still do this work. Maybe it's not around creating space, but we still have an opportunity to look at the root cause of our drinking and to create an amazing curated life where alcohol just isn't on our radar. So the second thing happened just very recently. I was presenting to a group of coaches in training, and someone who works with young moms said, this idea of creating space doesn't really work because there's no extra time. Young moms, moms with young children, I should say, are already maybe operating on the margins. They're definitely feeling pulled in so many directions. And so when we talk about, oh my gosh, you're going to have so much more space, they might have felt, or you may feel, you may be in this actual situation where not drinking feels like your life gets busier, and drinking was the only me time that you had. And so, if that is you or someone you know, I want to honor that place. And I want to say that when I've shared in the past, I didn't really embrace this perspective. And that's why I really wanted to do that today. So, as I thought about this question of how moms can create space or what that looks like for them, or what is the opposite of creating space? What if it's not needed in that same way in order to do the work? I was thinking about something that also really is sort of that upper limit, something we might be bumping up against. And I think it is the flip side of creating space, and that is a scarcity mindset. And for me, again, this is my perspective as of today, May of 2024, and it may change. And I ask full permission to share with you if something does change, and ask me to embrace your perspective if you see it differently. I think it's so valuable, and I love learning from all of you. So, to me, when I think about scarcity mindset, a very simple example would be around sleep. So I work with people who are looking at lifestyle, sometimes for nutrition or alcohol freedom changes and choices. And one of the things they might be looking forward to is getting better quality and quantity of sleep. And this lifestyle hack of getting better sleep is super important when it comes to overall wellness. And so it is one of the things that many of my clients will be working on and that we will discuss. And so sometimes they choose to wear an Aura ring or a Fitbit or a device that will measure their sleep. And so I ask them sometimes, how do you feel when you wake up? I want them to check in with, Do they feel rested? Do they feel energized versus looking at their device? Because sometimes what can happen is the first thing we do when we wake up is we turn to our partner and we say, "Oh, I had a terrible night's sleep," or, "Oh, I can't believe it's morning. Oh, I don't think I slept very well." And so if we feel rested and then we look at our device and it shows that we had a restless sleep, we might fall immediately into that scarcity mindset. So we're looking at the lack. We're focusing on what we don't have. And I think that is an example of how I think about scarcity mindset. It is the focusing on the gap or the lack. And there are so many benefits to noticing that gap and being aware of where we want to go and where we're at. I always think of a roadmap, and we can't get to where we're going unless we know where we're starting from. So while that can be valuable, I think as a culture, we tend to fall into that scarcity mindset. So just check in with yourself and ask, when was the last time I complained about my lack of sleep? Did I even ask if I felt rested? Did I notice what was good about my rest? And so pay attention to those places where maybe scarcity is showing up. And so I think for young moms or moms of young children, we can fall into that place. And it can be a real place. We can absolutely be in a place where it feels like we don't have any extra time, or we don't have enough support, or we don't have any extra time to do the work on the things that are important to us, such as being more present with our partner, being more engaged at work, being a better friend, perhaps. And so I'm not negating the fact that it can feel like there's no space. But what I want to invite you to do, if this is you, is I want you to focus on how we can let go of that scarcity mindset. And we can start to create strategies that build space. So, one of the things that I think is really powerful that we often neglect is asking for help. I know as a young mom, I fell into the trap of thinking only I could do it, or I knew best, or, someone would offer to help and it was just easier for me to do it. So I think asking for help is a very important place to check in. And then the second thing is setting boundaries. We often, particularly as women, are in a role where we are just so hyper aware that there's a lot of emotional pressure on us to hold on to all of the things. I talk to women a lot about this idea of the emotional load that we carry as moms. And so you may have a loving and helpful partner, but it seems that most women still fill the role of carrying the emotional part of the family dynamic. And that looks like remembering the mother in law's birthday. It looks like scheduling the dental appointments for the children. It looks like making the haircut or noticing that school break is coming up and arranging play dates. And so if you have a partner who does that, bravo, brava. But it seems to be rare in the culture that we've created. And so I think having boundaries around that and having clear communications is so important. And to me, this is where we get to do the work of the root cause of why we might have been drinking. So for some moms, it can be that not having that support, it feels like alcohol is the one place where they get to check out, turn off their brain, relax. And I get that. But if you have let go of alcohol and you're looking for that edge, that space, I want to invite you to look at these areas of communication, boundaries, and asking for help so that you can then have a moment to connect with a friend. You can take a rest after dinner if you need to, and allow that your partner may want to support you in other ways, but just maybe you haven't thought to clue them in, or they don't actually understand that emotional burden that you're carrying around all of the have tos and the future have tos. And so I think that scarcity can make us feel that we don't have enough time. So I think the other strategy that you might try, and let me know if you do and this works or you feel it might be helpful, is language. I think language is so important. And often I will say that in terms of the way that we're talking to ourselves and the negative words that we're using. I don't have enough time, or there's too much to do, or I'm so busy, or I don't know if I'll get it all done. Those words are, while they may be true, they're not helpful to our brain because they are reinforcing the idea of scarcity. I don't have enough time. And so I had to stop that pattern myself when I stopped drinking. I would rush around the house trying to get to work on time, telling myself I was running late, and I really had to focus on slowing down. So I want to invite you to consider if you are telling yourself those words that are not helpful. And so I literally started telling myself, I have all the time that I need. There's plenty of time to get everything done. Time is on my side. Time is my friend. And that took me out of that automatic default response. And it took work, it took intention, and I had to say it even when I didn't believe it. And the other thing I did was if I found myself running around like a chicken with her head cut off, literally, I felt like that. I felt like I can't find my keys. I can't find my purse. I can't find my head. Did I pack my lunch? And so I guess not literally like a chicken with their head cut off, but figuratively. And so that was a place where I decided to stop in my tracks and breathe. And the act of slowing down felt wildly uncomfortable because the thing that wanted me to keep going, I felt the pressure to move faster in that circumstance. And so I had to do the opposite. I don't live where it snows very often, but I'm fascinated by those that live in the icy conditions where in the winter, when your car is sliding toward a snowbank, you literally steer toward the bank to get out of it. You do the opposite of what it would feel like to avoid a collision. And so I had to do the opposite of what felt natural because what I was doing, running around, crazy making, telling myself I didn't have enough time, rushing through life, beating myself up, getting anxious, talking negatively, focusing on lack was not working. And these were in the early days after I stopped drinking, the first year or two. I really had to start focusing on what looked different, what I could do differently. And so I would stop in my tracks and I would force myself to take a couple breaths. And sometimes I would force myself to walk in slow motion, very slowly. Goodness, it was hard. But what it did was it helped me regain my sensibility. It helped me focus on the present, it helped me calm down, it helped me slow down, and then when your brain, your prefrontal cortex is back online, you can think clearer, and I would find my keys, or my phone was often in my hand, and then the morning would move much smoother. So when we think about creating space, I want to invite you to think about it in terms of all of these levels. Sometimes you might be at a season in life where there's less time, and that is a season, and it's okay. I still believe there are strategies, slowing down, talking kindly to yourself, asking for help that can make a difference. And I know as a young mom, I would often tell myself, well, I'm the only one who's going to do it, or it's up to me. And again, I want to challenge you. Is that statement or statement similar to that helpful? And are they true? And so we can come back to creating space, letting go of that scarcity mindset, and getting to do the underneath work that is the most important part of building this beautiful life. All right. Well, I hope that was helpful for you today. Thank you for allowing me to share where my evolution is going around these concepts. I will keep doing that as we grow together. And I'll see you next week in the Sober Edge podcast. I want to thank you for tuning in to the Sober Edge podcast. This is a place for important conversations and a safe place to question everything you thought you knew about drinking. If you're looking for your sober edge, I want to invite you to connect with me at thesobernutritionist.com, where you can grab my free resource, Becoming More, a guide to loving your sober life. And I would be so grateful if you enjoyed this podcast, if you would leave a rating and review, as it will help more people find their sober edge.